Yeah.
How do you pronounce this, Jay? It's Joker, but how do you pronounce the subtitle?
Do I look like I speak French?
Today we've got Joker Folie A Deux, the official teaser trailer.
My name's Jasmine.
We're going to Jasmine. We have Joker.
Joker Folie A Deux. Folie A Deux. I'm
Joker 2.
I don't speak French.
Joker 2.
Blé de la blé de blue blah blé.
Joker Part 2. Joker Folie A Deux. I don't speak French, sorry, I don't know how to say it. We're gonna call it Joker 2.
Got a new trailer of the Joker 2.
Yeah.
Folie A Deux.
Yeah, something
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like
I
that.
don't know what that means, but it sounds like it's French. It looks like it's French.
We just got out of watching Joker.
You're not speaking French!
Sigh.
Okay, I know this review is out a bit late, but let's just get this over with.
And here we go.
Joker 2, let's just stick with Joker 2, is of course the follow-up to the wildly successful 2019 box office hit, Joker. It opens up with an animated short, essentially recapping Arthur Fleck's transformation into Joker that we witnessed in the first film, although it really solidifies an interpretation that Joker is a distinct persona living in the brain of Arthur. An interpretation that I just don't buy, and that by the end of this film we learn that neither does Todd Phillips. We then pick up with Arthur, now almost fully reverted back to Arthur absent the Joker persona, who's languishing in Arkham, where he's now been for 2 years while he awaits trial. He gets picked on by the guards, is oppressed by the prison system, and so we essentially pick up with Arthur in the exact same state he was in at the beginning of the first film. A low, dejected, rejected nobody who can't affect change and who doesn't really have any agency of his own. But upon meeting Gaga's Harley Quinn in Arkham, he feels purpose re-enter his life, causing him to dust off his rusty Joker persona, which grows throughout the duration of his court case, eventually leading him to fire his lawyer and once again take charge of his own life, leading the charge of his own defence. Although it does need to be noted that even after this supposed change, the only real sightings of Joker we see throughout the duration of the entire film are imprisoned securely within Arthur's own imagination. After some courtroom drama and many, many, many songs,
there's always a Joker in the pack. There's always a lonely one.
This is a sad song.
Joker seemingly pushes the guards of Arkham too far by calling them fat while live on TV and suffers a brutal backlash, which completely obliterates his confidence and in so doing dismantles the Joker persona completely. The next day, the final day of the trial, he sheepishly re-enters the courtroom with his tail between his legs, donned in a drab brown suit in place of his usual flamboyant one, now completely broken and reduced back to his initial state as the hopeless wreck of a man that is Arthur Fleck. He confesses as much to the jury, confirming his regression, and at this stage Harley Quinn leaves the courtroom, disappointed that the target of her obsessions has let her down, that he revealed to the world he's not more than a mere man, and that Joker doesn't actually exist. Her fantasy has been shattered and she's become bored. Her and Arthur are over. Arthur then receives his inevitable verdict, guilty. But as the convictions start to come in thick and fast, Joker supporters outside manage to blow a hole in the courthouse, somehow miraculously incapacitating or killing everyone but Arthur, who makes his escape. It also includes a brief nod to how District Attorney Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face, at least in a shallow, literal sense. After being shepherded away by Joker fans, Arthur first feels relief, followed by panic when he learns that his fans' plan is to burn down the city once again. Are we seeing a repeating plot here by any chance? So Arthur flees from them as well, not wanting to take any part in any more violence or chaos, not wanting anything to do with the Joker. He instead seeks out Harley, who confirms she's bored of him and that none of what they had was real. Arthur is now fully broken, he has nothing left. He returns to Arkham where he resigns to life behind bars until his execution. Unfortunately, or fortunately for Arthur, his execution comes much quicker than he expects. With possible collusion from the guards, he's pulled aside by another inmate whom we've seen all too obviously skulking around in the background throughout the film, possessing a creepy smile throughout. He tells Arthur a joke which again relates to Arthur being a sad, lonely nobody, then stabs him. While Arthur bleeds out, we see the unnamed inmate cutting a smile into his own face a la Heath Ledger's Joker before we fade to black. And that's it, we're done. See you later. Before diving into exactly why this film just doesn't work, let's first highlight the very few positives. The courtroom scene with Gary Puddles is by far the best scene in the film, because we finally get to see some actual character work for once, which is almost entirely absent in this nearly 2.5 hour slog. We see the devastating effects wrought on Gary after the events of the first film, as well as how Arthur reacts to Gary's testimony, which provides a look under the hood of what's really going on in Arthur's mind. The film is also well shot, with blue-grey hues denoting the oppressiveness of Arkham, which is only lifted in the scenes in which Gaga's Quinn appears, offering light and warmth to Arthur. The performances were also dialed in, particularly Brendan Gleeson as the main guard and Lee Gill as Gary Puddles, who do their best with the scripts they were given. Sadly, that's it. That's pretty much where the positives end. The worst is literally everything else, and I mean, honestly, it really is just awful. First, one of the things that really stands out about how bad this film is that it's hard to even come up with any substantial things to critique, because the film itself lacks substance. It's a dull, pointless, meandering deconstruction of the first film, which seems actively spiteful and vengeful towards the success of its predecessor. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. Even Paul Schrader, the man who wrote Taxi Driver, which was one of the key inspirations of the first Joker film, couldn't stand to bear more than just a few minutes of Joker 2. But to attempt to wade into some substantial criticism of my own, let's take the major components one by one. As already mentioned, probably the biggest crime of Joker 2 is that it undoes all the good work of the original, dismantling Arthur's arc through murderous character regression. The film seems to go out of its way to show that Arthur is a character not worth following. Not for his fans in-universe, and not for us, the audience. He's a pathetic, cowardly nobody who's allowed himself to be bullied by the system once again, which undoes all of his progression as a character in the 2019 original. This film wants us to know that Arthur Fleck isn't Joker, that Joker isn't real, and that if he was real, he'd just be another nameless, faceless lunatic already locked up in an asylum. Next, the elephant in the room, the music.
This is the saddest song in the world.
Yes, it is.
This is, after all, a musical.
Supposedly.
And since the first Joker was a very close homage to Taxi Driver and the King of Comedy, this is obviously paying tribute to yet another Scorsese film, New York, New York, which, ironically, was another box office bomb, just like Joker 2. The music element is, in a word, pointless. It doesn't further the plot in any way, shape or form, and worse, it actually detracts from the normal flow of the film, boring as it is to watch. Anytime we feel like we might get a foothold on some semblance of a story or character exploration, we cut to an inevitably boring and irrelevant jingle.
This is a sad song. Hey, hey. Mm-hmm.
In addition to the music's pointlessness and bulwarking against plot progression, it's also just extremely uninteresting. There's not a single musical number which is fun or memorable or nice to watch or listen to. They're all awkward and they legitimately have no business being in this film. Their inclusion is genuinely puzzling.
Puzzling. Winston is about to do some puzzling.
Next, there are certain choices that are just really bizarre from both character and plot standpoints. Some are trivial but unnecessary, while others verge on character breaking. For example, before sacking her, Arthur forcibly kisses his lawyer multiple times throughout the trial and she just lets him. This is obviously a bit to keep continuity with his behaviour at the end of the first film when he kisses the guest on the Murray Franklin show, but at that point in his arc he'd fully embraced the Joker persona, whereas, as already covered earlier, in this film he's back to being just Arthur. Now this could possibly work if the film invested any time at all showing that Arthur was attempting to act out in a Joker-like way, in a bid to fake it till you make it, but the film absolutely squanders any such setup and so it comes across as just weird and out of place. What's more, while the woman in the first film is shocked but attempts to keep her composure as she's on live TV, the lawyer barely reacts at all. Another really weird choice is how they decided to frame Zazie Beetz' character, Sophie. She says that Arthur's mum was so sweet to her daughter, describing her in a positive light, before then in almost her next breath admitting that the mum continuously berated and insulted Arthur to Sophie, calling him an unfunny virgin. Not exactly what I'd call sweet. Why would she allow this woman anywhere near her daughter? It calls into question Sophie's character or even her perception of reality, which I'm sure isn't what the film was going for. The next weird choice is that of the grape scene.
Hey, Mandy! Oh, hi, Mandy! Yeah, I remember that.
Which just comes out of absolutely nowhere. And it occurs because he calls Brendan Gleeson fat, for fuck's sake.
Please just tell us, is Peter healthy?
Oh, yeah, he's fine. He's just really fat.
Wait, hang on a second. Did you just say I was fat?
Well, yeah.
Okay, this is news to me.
Not because Arthur attacks him, not because he riles up the other inmates and makes the guards' jobs harder and much more dangerous, which he does in a previous scene, by the way, to absolutely no retaliation from the guards, but because he, the Joker, wasn't quite as body positive as the guards would have liked. This film's an absolute car crash of incompetence and apathy. The next... You know what? As I sit here thinking of things to criticise, I've just realised that I honestly just can't be bothered. The film is so dull that it doesn't even spare any motivation in me to critique it more than I already have. It's a big, bland mess that never should have been made. The only real motivation it did instill is that of making me want to watch Tim Dillon's comedic rant since he has a small cameo as an Arkham guard. And since I'm at my limit shitting on this film, I'll just let Tim take the wheel for a bit.
When I was on set at Joker, it's rare that you know how bad something's going to be. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity to spend 3 months sitting in a trailer in makeup while my face broke out and probably irreversible damage to my skin. I'm grateful to have sat in a trailer for 3 months and been a small part of probably the worst film ever made. Arguably the worst film ever on a screen, where people are walking out of this film. I saw it in Laguna Beach. I was in California with COVID, and I went to go see it. And that's how you should see it, if you can see it with COVID. And I was watching it, and people were walking out of the theater confused, befuddled, angry. Why? Why did you do this? The reason the first one was so good is that it captured kind of the nihilism and anger rising in the culture. This one is such a mess, such a joyless slog. The most common word being associated with this film is disaster. I was in the worst film ever made. The worst thing anyone has ever seen. I mean, ever, ever, ever. Every time it looked like something may kind of be good happen, they would start with that shit. Like, you know, for once in my life, I have someone who needs me. Someone who needs me. And they're doing the dance. And I'm like, God, what is this? It was heinous, to use a word I use way too much. I had a nice little scene. It was quick. In fact, I missed my scene. I was texting on the phone about how bad this movie is. I didn't even see it, and I just walked out in Laguna Beach. Do you know that when my agents called me to put me in this, they told me it was going to be a big deal for me? Oh, it's going to be a big deal. It's going to open up doors for you. The only door it opened up is the door to the Laguna Beach movie theater when everybody walked the fuck out. That's the door it opened up.
I was in Joker 2, which just came out. It's the worst film that has ever been made. It's the worst film it's actually not so bad. It's the worst film ever made.
Likewise, since Steve Coogan plays a TV interviewer early on in the film, Joker 2 also inspired me to return for the 10th rewatch of Steve Coogan's Alan Partridge, which if you haven't seen it, you should swap whatever it is that you were planning to watch tonight and watch that instead. It's honestly one of the best sitcoms of all time.
You ever been to Ireland, Alan?
No, I'd love to go.
It amazes me when people say that and it's only 49 quid on a plane.
Yeah, I think that's what puts me off.
And honestly, that's about all the energy I can muster up for Joker 2. It's a film that gave its audience no credit, and so I feel like I can't really give it the credit of any further critique. We're going to finish off these reviews with some quick ratings of each important aspect of the film, including plot, world building, dialogue, characters, acting, direction, and finally, genre-specific elements. First, the plot. The entire point of which was to regress Arthur and pay a big fuck you to both the studio and the audience. 1 out of 10. For world building, the world established in the first film is mostly maintained here, but this is itself a problem. It's been 2 years since the end of the first film and seemingly nothing has changed outside the gates of Arkham. Now, this isn't to say that political strife can't become extended, even intractable, It obviously can and does, but the problem is that as far as we, the audience, are aware, literally nothing has changed. There have been no developments, no changes to the underworld of Gotham. We could have been peppered with pieces of information such as that crime families like the Falcones had risen, and that these were currently in an all-out war with Roman Sionis. Arthur lit the tinderbox of Gotham at the end of the first film and it exploded, resulting in uncontrollable chaos which provides the perfect breeding ground for these over-the-top villains to proliferate. Instead, we get none of that, and despite the passage of time, the world is seemingly exactly the same, so world building will have to be given a 2 out of 10. The dialogue is generic, bland, and, at least in parts, nonsensical. 1 out of 10. In terms of characters, most of the characters are overall just not of any real import, and Joker's character was well and truly assassinated. 1 out of 10. For acting, the only people who really impressed me were Lee Gill as Gary Puddles and Brendan Gleeson as the main Arkham guard. Everyone else gave run-of-the-mill performances, although, to be fair, it can be difficult to disentangle the acting from the atrocious writing. 5 out of 10. For direction, honestly, this has to receive a poor score, even just for the intent of Todd Phillips. There may have been some nice shots here and there, but it's clear Phillips hates this character and hates that he had to make this film. 1 out of 10. In terms of the genre-specific elements, as a musical, it's awful. No original songs, or not that I noticed at least. I may have tuned out for a dozen or so songs. The popular songs that they remixed were not done with any particular style or in any interesting way. And as a comic book movie, even though the original didn't really feel like a comic book movie either, audiences got an Elseworlds interpretation of the origin of Joker, while in Joker 2, apart from the fact that the DA is Harvey Dent, there's absolutely nothing that designates it as a superhero film whatsoever, as it turns out that the protagonist isn't even a comic book character, he's just some random man who had a breakdown. And finally, in terms of an exploration of mental health, the original showed how a person can be pushed to their wits' end by a bad life, a bad week, or even a bad day, channeling Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, which is arguably the core of Joker's story, or some versions of him at least. But Joker 2? I'm not convinced there were any real explanations of mental health here at all. Joker 2 fails miserably on all 3 aspects in my opinion. 1 out of 10. Overall, Joker 2 is one of the worst pieces of shit I've ever had the displeasure of sitting through, and ends with an overall score of 1.71, which I honestly feel is still too high. If you like this video in any way, shape or form, please feel free to like, subscribe, comment and all that good stuff. See you in the next video. Ta-ra.